Being a parent is arguably one of the most demanding jobs on the planet, closely followed by the daily grind of running a business. For those who juggle both roles, the challenge is real. Balancing the needs of your children with the demands of your business truly tests your ability to work smarter, not harder. We'll often find ourselves pulled in various directions and possibly judged without even realizing it. No book or podcast can definitely tell you whether A or B should come first. It's really a learning curve, and yes, you're going to make mistakes. But as long as the well being of those you love and work with remains intact, this is the tough reality of being both a parent and an entrepreneur. But I think rest assured, it is absolutely possible. What's up, everyone? This is Fit for Business with me, Jarod Lehn. If you could do me a favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, and go ahead and tap that subscribe button. Or if you guys are listening on Spotify, please go ahead and tap that follow button. Welcome to episode 35. And then for those of you who don't know, I'm the owner and founder of Socialtopia, a social media marketing agency based out of Monroe, New York. We've been in business now for just over 6 years, and our agency primarily partners with fitness entrepreneurs and home service professionals. We help those people by helping them elevate their brands and achieving their marketing goals. Let's welcome Jessica Lampone, a dynamic force in the real estate industry and the proud broker owner of Willowbrook Properties, located in the charming town of Pearl River, New York. Jessica is not just a powerhouse in business, but she's also a dedicated parent who gracefully navigates the complexities of balancing her career and her family life. With firsthand experiences in the challenges and triumphs that come with both being an entrepreneur and parent, Jess brings a wealth of knowledge and insight to our discussion. So Jess, welcome to today's podcast.
Hi, Jarod. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Jess, if you wouldn't mind telling, our viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So like Jarod said, my name is Jessica Lampone. I am the broker owner of Willowbrook Properties. We're boutique brokerage, real estate brokerage, located in Pearl River, New York. We service Rockland, Westchester, and Orange counties primarily. We dabble in New Jersey when we have to. And yeah, I met Jarod, 7 years ago probably now, when I first got my license, and I was working for a company in Nyack. And I remember I wanted to tell you, Jarod, that our office had a meeting with you to talk about marketing strategies and social media and all that. And I remember I don't know if you pulled up my Instagram page or you just mentioned it and you're like, Jess's Instagram page is good. Like, Jess has a good Instagram page. And I remember being like, oh my God, thank you. And I think you had said it was because I had like professional and personal stuff on there. Like, I didn't just make it very dry with professional
Sure.
things. And I've kept that in the back of my mind for the last 7 years. And I always try to make my content like relatable and funny at the same time while also promoting my business. And I just want to let you know that you taught me from the very beginning of this journey I'm on, how to kind of
thank you.
put my content together. No, but thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. It's what we do.
So I was thinking about, going through our possible questions last night and thinking about just some things I wanted to touch on. And I remembered that. And I was like, I have to tell him, because that's like all is that we help somebody. Like, that's what entrepreneurs love, is that like, oh, we knew something and what we said helped the next person. Like, that's what I want to do.
Without even noticing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So Jess, can you tell us what really for you had inspired you to start your journey in the world of, entrepreneurship?
Sure. So my parents are entrepreneurs. They're small business owners. So I kind of thought, at least from a young age, that I didn't want to work for somebody else. I liked the idea of building something of my own from the ground up and making my own schedule, and just knowing that my earning potential is as what I put into it. It's limitless. So when I started in real estate about 7 years ago, um, I knew nothing at all. I think I was 20 years old when I met you. Yeah, and I had just started when I met you, and I was eager to learn. You know, I was still living at home. I was in a very good time to experiment because I was my parents. I wasn't paying rent. You know, like if I wasn't having a steady income for a little while, it was okay while I picked up a new skill. Um, which is really what I did. I shadowed a lot of agents that were more experienced than me, and I just learned as I went, which is, I think, what entrepreneurs do. We just learn as we go. My favorite saying is "fake it till you make it." 'Cause I do believe that I do believe that there are a lot of entrepreneurs that feel the way that I do, in that we have like serious imposter syndrome, and that I know what I'm doing. And even at the very beginning, I knew that I could carry myself in a way that, okay, if I don't have all the answers, I'll find all the answers, and that's okay. But there's always a little voice in my head that's like, you have no idea what's going on. What are you doing? Why do you think you can do this by yourself and things like that? But
And now you feel that way to this day?
mhm,
Actually, I think I
mhm,
saw you posted a reel about that.
about yeah, imposter syndrome. But I think
The
that
voices in
that
your head.
voice in my is always overshadowed by the fact that like I show up every day and you know I get things done at the end of the day.
Right.
So there's always going to be like a little negative voice in my head that's like, "What are you doing? Why do you think you know what you're doing? How did you get here?
Right.
This was all luck." But really, um, that's what I love about entrepreneurship is that it's what you put into it. You get out what you put
Yeah.
in, um, and you have no one but yourself to blame if you fail. And but failing is also part of a huge part of the
Mm,
process.
for
Um,
sure.
so failure is not a bad word, you know.
Right.
And you,
Listen, we met 7 years ago when I was like trying to tackle the forefront of real estate, and I got to the point where I was like, for me, I failed because I wasn't seeing any success, and I had to start all over again. So
mhm.
I agree with
But
that. Um,
it's the beauty of the thing is that you can start
yeah,
over.
can.
You can start over, and you learned from whatever didn't work the
Although it's
last time
scary, depending upon where you are in life and your position,
in
and
life.
if you're married, if you have kids, and so forth, or if you're single and you're living at your parents, or
Right.
where it may be. So where and what were your parents doing as small business owners?
So they're in construction. They own a construction management company, and they actually own a lot of real estate as well, which is where I got my real estate interest
Mm,
from. Um, and I just always saw my mom was fortunate enough; she was able to be a stay-at-home mom, and my dad was he was always working, but also he was home. You know, like he and I always thought that was very cool that he was the boss. Hear him on his phone calls, right? And I was like, he's the one that they're asking him questions, and he knows all the answers. And I thought that was I always looked up to him when I was in that aspect, in the same way that I always look up to my mom in the mother aspect, and I even more so now. I just had my first child, and putting the two together is hard. It's hard. It's hard and it's exhausting.
yeah, we're gonna
Um,
come back to that for sure. That's definitely a good question that I'm gonna come back to. It definitely is hard. It still is hard, and I don't think it ever gets easy.
I
Um,
don't think it's gonna
So
get.
I know we're at different places in, our, small business journeys, right? Everybody has that stage, the phases, the ups and downs. Um, would you say there's like a pivotal moment from your journey so far, where you might have faced a setback, a significant setback or a minor setback? And if you did, how did you go about overcoming those setbacks?
So probably the whole first year I was in business, I could not get anybody to come work here. I didn't know how to, and that was a big part of that feeling like, well, you're brand new in your own business. What do you have to give to anybody? Why would anybody come work here, right? And I really had to like step back, have a conversation like with myself, and be like, you have so much worth and value to give to somebody. That's all you have to, you just have to bring yourself, and if whoever that person is that's coming to interview with you is vibes with that, then great. If they don't vibe with that, that's also okay, because you're never going to be everybody's cup of tea, which is something that I've learned also in this journey. So really the biggest thing for me, yeah, was that I didn't know where to start to show, prospective agents that this is a good place for you to come and learn. Like, I can teach you. I know what I'm doing and I can
Now,
teach you.
did you have like, is there like a specific number of people you might have like interviewed before you got the one person that they said yes to, and you were like, oh wait, yes, you want to come work with us?
Yeah, so I probably interviewed maybe only like five
Oh, okay.
people, and then like the sixth person, they were leaving, and I was like, wait. I said to them, I said, wait, do you want to work here? And they were like, oh yeah, I thought, yeah. Do you want me to work here? I was like, of course I want you to work here. Come work here. It was just it was funny because they were like, I thought you were interviewing me, and I said, it really feels like you're interviewing me, and if you like me and if you like this office and want to work here. It was funny. I still to this day have such a hard time feeling like the boss. It just is it's a weird concept to me
And
still.
I think that's an interesting like perspective you just said, and that's kind of the dynamic I feel in 2024. The interviewing process has significantly adapted and changed, where the employer not necessarily is interviewing the candidate. It's kind of quite the opposite, because I shouldn't say I feel, but there are. That's just how it is in today's day and age in society. And it took me a while to like realize that, and I had that same like, oh shit, like one time like during an interview process I was like, hey, I think it's like I may be asking the questions, but like these interviewees are actually like interviewing me, like why do they want to
Hmm.
come work for me type of thing, or
Right.
type
Right. Why should they work
for
for
sure,
you?
yeah,
Yeah.
why should they come work here for us for sure. It's
Which is it's a bit of a role reversal.
for you, every parent probably has like something that like, oh shit, I didn't realize this was going to be a thing. What was the biggest shock for you when you became a parent? Like, do you have like one big shot? I mean, there's probably many. Like,
Oh
is there
gosh.
is there like one thing that you could say, maybe that you could correlate to like your business that you were just like now being a parent, kind of like, oh wait,
Yes. I know, didn't realize, didn't think that once I had a child, I really, I looked at my husband and I was like, I don't want to go to work. I want to be here with her. If I come home and she learned something new, she rolled over or I don't know, whatever, she cooed and I didn't hear it. Like I would come home and like cry. And which was, it's not weird, it's your child's, but my first baby, was this business. And seeing all the new things and all the things that I could do in this business was my first child.
sure,
Um, so it was a little bit, I don't even know what the word is. It was just an odd feeling that, this business that I had worked so hard to create and get to the point that we were at, um, this tiny little human who needs me like came along and I just immediately was like nothing else matters. So I really had to kind of hype myself up at first when I started going back to
mm,
work to get back to it and not be like I just want to go home, I just want to see her, I just want to snuggle. um,
mm,
and that's hard, I think. And I've talked to a lot of moms who have had to go back to work, and I think that's very common. But something that I didn't know was really going to be like hit me as hard as it did.
mm,
That even if you are proud of your work and you want to go back to work and you do want to continue to have that part of your life, there is a whole bunch of guilt that comes with leaving your child to go to work, which is crazy because I know and I'm worried. It just is I don't want to say it's not a fatherly thing because I'm sure it is, but I do think it might be a little bit different for moms.
mm. Yeah, I can attest to what you're saying. It's more of like a paternal natural instinct when it comes to mothers over fathers, and I'm not saying that's not the case for all parents, but
Of
I agree
course.
with what you're saying. I saw that on my side of things, being a parent and my wife being a mother of two, where I can attest to like what you're saying. That mindset, just being like, hey, where somebody like you who's running a business, you necessarily don't have maternity leave, right? You're kind of like,
Mhm.
hey, I can go back to work or not go back to work, right? And I think we had
Right.
that conversation where you like we're back to work like a week later or some crazy shit, or not even.
Yeah. And I had a really crazy. I had my baby early, so I thought I had a few more
Yeah,
weeks. And my poor husband, he's great. He, you know, was on my phone while I'm in the hospital, and he's answering my emails and my phone calls, my text messages, and scheduling a closing. The man's an electrician. I mean, he's smart. He's a genius. He's never done it. He's like but became my assistant and was doing all this stuff that I, never did
Yeah.
before. Um, on top of that, he was handed a baby and was like, "Here you
Yeah,
go."
yeah.
So he really, it, I'm just gonna throw this out there. It's a little off topic, but like having a really amazing partner in life has made this transition 1,000 times easier because he's been very very supportive, and very hands on with the baby. So it's definitely, it has helped with the transition back to
Mm.
work big time. Still sucks. I still, get sad and I want to go see her, but it has helped a lot. But yeah, there is no when you work for your there is no maternity leave. I mean, you could take a vacation, but you're going to work the whole time.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a thing. It's worth it in the end. It has been for me at least, all of it. But there's days where I want to throw my phone out the window.
Yeah, for sure. So, I can like, think back when, both our children were born. And, so for me, like, I know you have like an office, you have physical office space, we have remote working spaces out of our homes. So my office is
Hmm.
downstairs, and like, my kids would be upstairs with my wife, for the first couple of months of the journey. And I was like, man, I'm down here and I'm missing out on everything that's going on, the first month, but I'm like literally like beneath the walls. So,
You're, and it's almost harder though because you can
oh
hear
yeah,
them.
it's
You
so
can
hard.
hear
You
your
know,
baby crying,
it's
or
just
you
like,
can
and I
hear
would like,
whatever.
run upstairs and like just like fill up my water, like,
Hmm.
hey, what's
Yeah,
going on up here? And I always
yeah,
had that, that sense of like regret type of thing, if you would, where it's just like, hey, like
yeah.
I want to be here, but I'm trying to, be for the business too at the same time.
Sure. And I mean that's what I think being an adult and a
Oh yeah.
parent and a husband means. It's you're raising your kids and you're providing for your kids, and sometimes that means your time, and it just is what it is. Especially in especially in this day and
Mm,
age. Most I think, maybe not most, maybe that's a generalization, but I think a lot more um, couples with children are both working.
mm.
Both working parents, more so than I think maybe when I was growing up, or I don't know. It's just it feels like a different dynamic, but we're all trying to just make it work.
When the topic of success comes to mind, and I'll say this,
Hmm.
success means so many different things to each individual, right? What it means to me probably means different to you. But when you think of success, who do you think of and why?
Who do I think of? Um, I think of my
Mm,
parents. Um, and my why is because I was very fortunate in growing up that I never worried about money. That was never really a topic in my family. Like I said, luckily and thankfully that I was never worried where's my next meal going to come from. I was never worried. I grew out of my sneakers. I need a new pair of shoes. Like it was just not something that my parents ever put in our minds when we were young. Once we got to working years, we all had jobs. We knew the value of a dollar. But I now as an adult with a child, um, I realize how important that was. Or I don't know if important is the right word, but just how fortunate we were, um, to not ever think about finances when we were growing up. It just wasn't really a thought in our minds, and that to me, now that I'm older and realize how expensive everything is, is something that I hope I can provide for my children, in that they don't have to worry about money. They don't have to think about it. It's not like, well, I'm afraid to ask mommy and daddy. Like I got mud on my shirt and I need a new shirt. You know what I mean? Things like that. Not that that sounds materialistic, but that's not really where I'm going with that. It's just the fact that that's one less thing for a child to have to worry about, and
so
that.
so like level of like comfort and support, like that it's just like it's not like a thing. And now not to say that it could have been a thing, and maybe I'm not saying it was in your family, but it could have been a thing, with your, but it was never saying, hey, Jess, we can't afford this right now. You can't do it. Saying, I'm not saying your
Mhm.
dad was at that level, but sometimes as business
But
owners,
I didn't know one way or the other, and I think that was
for sure.
really something. Yeah, I think that was something that was really just a great way for them to have raised us, because it was one less thing to worry about, and it was something where we didn't worry about it, but we also always knew the value of a
Right.
dollar.
And I think
And
that's
everyone
major
was,
important for, parents to be able to like teach their children, saying like, hey, you know, this costs X a dollar and this is why.
right.
Lessons
Or,
behind it.
if you want, well, everything you need is provided for. If you have a want, once you're old enough, you go to work, then you get like,
Hmm.
and provide it for yourself. Or you want gas money, okay, go get a job. you know, and I think that all of that is what has been very impactful and very important
Hmm.
to raise me into who I am and how I think today. And back, I guess, to the question of what do I think, who and what do I think of when I think of success?
Sure.
Who would be my parents? And I think the big what or why is more so like feeling content and happy more than the money part. Although I guess the money part helps those things. But yeah, success sounds more like just being happy in your day to day life more than anything else
Hmm.
to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you're saying here. So going back to like marketing and like storytelling, right? Branding, we were talking about it like at the beginning. Some life lessons you took from when you first met me at your
Mm-hmm.
old brokerages back in the day. Today, for you, how does that fit into your branding, and how do you intertwine like your personal experiences, like with your entrepreneurial journey, and how do you kind of like mash it together, for the business? Like, what does that look like for you guys?
Sure. So, our office just happens to be all of the agents we're all in our 20s and 30s. Um, and so our like niche client, not everybody, but it just happens to be typically first time home buyers, or maybe somebody, a couple who just is growing a family and now they need a bigger house. So that seems to be our like bread and butter at the moment. So when we market and when we brand, those are the people that are following us on our Instagram, on our Facebook, on things like that. So brand and we market, we all kind of end up using a lot of current like pop culture things, if that makes
Sure.
sense.
Pop culture references.
And I
It hits on the head.
Yeah, exactly. And I've also noticed that like, not that I have, I don't know, 600 followers on Instagram. I'm not like crazy famous on Instagram or anything, but I have noticed that my best like reels and whatnot are ones that are just like not necessarily specific to real estate, but they're just people in like the age range that we're in. So I think recently, or when I was pregnant, I had put one up, and the audio was from the hot chick, and it's I think it's Rob Schneider, and he says, "It's me, Jessica. I'm in here," and I like showed me with my baby belly, and I got that was like my most watched reel because it's just funny and relatable, and it was my way to put out. I had wrote in the description that we're expecting the next few weeks, but no worries. We have a great team of agents in the office, and everything still runs smoothly. So like that's kind of how I put it out there, and also like could clarify and like put my clients at ease that okay, this is going on with me. I may be a little preoccupied for a hot second, but there I have a team behind me, and everything will still run as it's supposed to. Because I had a few you know properties under contract, and I had so many so many things that were gonna like I was gonna need to be around pretty much exactly when I was supposed to be having my child. So that was like a silly, funny video that I could grab people's attention, and then also explain this is what's going on, and this is how things are going to progress going forward. This is who to contact if you can't get in touch with me, and those were that kind of took off. And any other reels that I put up that have done like the best were just kind of like um, what I put up something that was I just said, oh, it was just about like you manifest the life you want, but you just sit around and wait for it. You have to work for it and go get it. And that one was like one of my other top like viewed
So
reels.
now, I want to, yeah. So let's touch on something real quick, and I'm gonna not get off topic, but I want to hone in on something here for like people to listen to and for you to hear. So you mentioned
Yeah.
600 followers. That's a amount of followers for Willowbrook Properties, like IG. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Now let me spit on this real quick. So now, hypothetically, like, what's your average transaction
Like,
deal size?
tell me. Oh, I mean, median home price around here is like six hundred
Okay.
thousand.
How many transactions did you do last year?
I think in the office we had like 30.
Okay. So you have 600 followers. If you took 10 of those followers and put them in a room and you close five of those followers and their average transactional deal was $600,000. Now, I know 600 followers doesn't sound like a lot, but you close five of those deals, that's over $3 million
Mhm.
in revenue. And that's like an extra five transactions. So I'm just trying to put things in perspective. And like we've all seen those memes like, hey, put 10 people in a room, put 100 people in a room, put 1,000 people in a room. So although maybe you have 600 followers, for the IG, some of them are friends and family, but like, potentially, if these people are coming in, and look at it like on that, like, I guess, the macro level, I would say.
Yeah, no, it's true. I follow on Instagram also Tony Peck. He is part of Why Not You Media. I think he's based out of Westchester, and he does like coaching talks and whatnot. And I've heard him say a few times, and it's true. When people say to him, oh, I only have 700, 600 followers, whatever, and he'll say, okay, but if you had to go stand in front of a room of 700 people, isn't that a lot of people? Wouldn't you think that's a lot of people? And it was like, oh, yeah, good point. That is a lot of people. We're just so programmed to think like, oh, if I don't have like a blue check mark next to my name, or like I don't have a minimum of 5,000 followers, like nobody cares about me, which is just not true. Because I also have gotten many clients through Instagram, even with my measly 600 followers. So
Yeah. And then I'm just putting that perspective, right? That's all I was coming to. So 600
yeah,
followers. Yeah. It's, for what you're doing. Yeah. You're there. Um,
you're absolutely right.
so
You're absolutely
I'm sure at some point, people ask you this question, or maybe you've been asked this question, but let me ask you this. I'm going to preface it this.
okay.
For somebody that's contemplating of starting his or her own business, what advice would you give to that person that is hesitant to take the leap?
Okay, this is a good one. This is a good question.
Yeah,
Okay,
okay.
my advice would be, first of all, like I'm a big list person, so I would say like do a pro con list. Like, why do you want to do it? What's your reasoning? If your reasoning is just like I want to make some money, you're probably going to lose money at first. So like that might not be your best
Hmm.
reasoning. If your reasoning is I want to build something of my own, I want to put my own hard like blood, sweat and tears into it, and build something from the ground up, and really just the world is my oyster, and I can make as much money as possible, and this and that, and I can provide for my family, I can provide for myself, whatever it may be. Those are good. I think those are
Yeah,
good reasons. I just if somebody comes to me and says, I feel like I just want to make a lot of money. Okay, yeah, eventually that sounds great. Um, Probably not at first. Probably not at first, right? Can you attest to this? Like most likely at first, you're not going to make a lot of money. You're going to have to spend a little bit.
yeah. I'll give
Spend
my
what you
two
make.
cents after you finish yours.
Yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of advice I could give, but I think the biggest thing is to really sit down and figure out why you want to do that. And if you sit down and you're like, I really, I still want to. This is what I want to do. Great, perfect. Then as long as you have that mindset that this is what you want to do, you can do it. You just have to really be disciplined in that you're going to put your time in, and there's not really anyone behind you to help you.
Yeah. So I think there's two parts to like what I want to say here. So for me, going on 7 years, November will be 7 years, for our business, like I said at the beginning of the pod. I read a blog, which is not really relevant these days, but a blog, probably
Mhm.
back in 2017 after I had launched my company, and it made me nervous as shit. And here's why. So this blog was somebody that was a nomad, right? They had a digital journey back when it was like I'm saying it's not a big thing, but it was like
Definitely.
even bigger than, they were on a beach and shit, like typing up this blog post. And I read it and it was like, these are X reasons why you shouldn't start your own business because of X. And I was like, all right, it caught me and I read it. And one of the main things was if you're starting your own business, you better make sure that you have reserves, meaning you should have 3 to 5 years saved up of what you're currently earning, right? So if you're making 70K a year, you should at least have 210 to $350,000 saved up in reserves for
Mm-hmm.
that amount of time because that's based off of what you're currently living on. And
Mm-hmm.
I read it, and the old me was just like, yeah, nonsense.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, and that wasn't my position whatsoever when I started this. But however, looking back then, what I know now, I would sure as shit send somebody to that blog post, or I've said this multiple times in this podcast and in conversations with people that,
Mm-hmm.
and now going to what you're saying, like depending upon like what type of business you are starting,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you may go that length of time without making any money. Because you need to put money back into the business. You can't do it all. Then you need to contract out. You need to hire. So all this
Mm-hmm.
money is going out the door. So based off of what your quality of life is and how you're trying to provide for your family or even just yourself, if it's just one person, you have to have that thought. Now, the one thing you just said, which always stands out to me, I want to make money. People want to make money, right? Everybody needs to
Of
make
course.
money, wants to make money because they need to survive. But I guess it's like, how much
Mm-hmm.
money do you want to make? And now another big, you know, word that's come out over the past couple of years as of lately is an intrapreneur, not entrepreneur, intrapreneur, where an intrapreneur is like maybe a number two or number three or number four, depending on how big the company is. So it's like somebody like maybe you or me, like, hey, I don't really want to start my own business because I don't want to deal with that pressure of the stress. How are we going to survive? Where's
Mm-hmm.
the money coming from? Am I making payroll? All these things. But I could be really a good number two person, right? So like you could go work at a company and be a number two person and make a shit ton of money. But then, you're not dealing with all the burdens on your shoulders as a number one person.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of like my add on to what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah. That if you're not, yeah, if you're not entirely sure where to start, or if you're not entirely sure that you want to be like the number one guy,
Or girl.
every number one guy needs or girl. Yeah, sorry. Every number one needs a number two.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
right? So, and there ain't nothing wrong with
No,
that.
it's true.
Um,
That's kind of like,
mm-mm.
where I was going with that. It's just, but that blog post always stood out for me because it hits home and it makes sense.
Puts it in perspective. Yeah. And I mean, we touched on this before. When I first got into real estate, before I started my company, I was living, I was 20, I just graduated college. I was living at home, didn't have all these bills to pay. So I could have a job where I wasn't having a steady income. Then by the time I decided I'm going to open my own brokerage, um, I was about to get married. So I had, my now husband, who could, support us while I wasn't making that much, really a lot of money. And got things going. So I was in a very lucky position for both of those transitions. So for me to say like, oh, you have to have this, you have to have that, like I don't want to say I had it easy, but I had like a safety net, which was definitely helpful. That if I failed at this endeavor, I wasn't going to be homeless, which was helpful. I know that many people are not in that position, which would make me say even more, be sure that you want to do this. Be sure that you have reserves, like you said, Jarod. And if you're going to do it. You
It's
can't
all or it's
and
all or
half-ass
nothing.
it. Yeah, exactly.
This is going to segue into my next question for you. In the few years you guys have been operational as your independent broker, you've seen crazy times in markets fluctuations, and we continue to see that.
Mm-hmm.
How are you guys staying adaptable in these market fluctuations?
Sure. I mean, I think the same way that most people are. One, just staying front of mind to your clients, and two, and probably more important than that, is just staying um, educated.
Mm,
You know, there's all this, all these new rules coming out after the NAR settlement. Basically, I don't know if you know about this. There's like all these new rules for realtors that because Cliff Notes version, sellers did not understand, realtors were not explaining well enough that commission rates are
Mm.
negotiable, always have been. So if I went to Mr. Seller and I said, I'll sell your house for 4%, for a 4% commission, I'll take 2%, I'll give 2% to the buyer's agent. Sellers just assumed that was kind of like market rate, like that's what it was. They couldn't say, I only want to pay 3%. So that's how this lawsuit came about. The National Association of Realtors, which we call NAR, they were sued, and along with a bunch of other big companies. And the outcome was that sellers, we have to be more careful and really explain to sellers that if I say, Mr. Seller, I usually work for 4%, Mr. Seller can then say, well, I'm only paying you 2. Okay, so now I'm only getting 2%. So I'm not going to give any of my 2% out to the buyer's agent because then I'm really not making a living. So now, Jarod, you're a buyer's agent. You're going to bring in your buyer. But Mr. Seller and me as the listing agent, we're not offering you compensation. So now buyers, not all buyers, not all the time, but if the seller and the listing agent decide, the seller and the listing agent both decide that they are not going to give out any compensation to a buyer's agent, the buyers now have to pay their buyer's agent. It's not coming out of the sale price. Now in Rockland County, I have so far, I'm not saying hasn't happened, but I have not come across any sellers that are not offering a buyer's agent compensation. So it hasn't been an issue that the buyers are now having to come up with extra money, pay their realtor. But it is something that those are all new rules. Now, there are a lot of questions that come with that. There's a lot of different moving parts. One of them being, okay, if a buyer has to pay their buyer's agent on top of the sale price, can they roll that commission percentage into their mortgage so that they don't have to come up with an extra 10, 15, $20,000 on top of everything else they already have to pay, their down payment, closing costs, all that stuff. Currently, I don't think you can do that, but this rule just went into effect on August 17th, I believe, in New York. So we're still trying to navigate that, figure out if lenders are going to allow you to start to do that when that scenario pops up. There's so many questions, and every day in every situation, every client, there's a new question that comes up, and there's no answers yet because it's all so new. So back to what we're talking about, how do we navigate all these changing things in the market? Just stay educated. I mean, you don't even have to leave your house. You could just, there's webinars, there's online classes. Just go read a book, go online, watch the webinar. We can stay as up to date and educated on all the different changes as we can. I mean, that's all we can do. And then there's still going to be things that come up that nobody has an answer to, and we'll figure it out.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, I'm sure,
the education.
especially in like your industry and what you all do. I mean, well, yeah, not to say that what we do we always are currently having to stay up to date on, trends, markets, like what's going on,
Mm-hmm.
new technologies, innovations. I think that goes hand in hand with what you all do in real estate. I
Yeah.
have heard of what you were talking about, but I can wholeheartedly say I did not go down the rabbit hole. So that was why I was interested to hear you explain that. So thanks for
Sure.
being able to break
Don't
it
go
down.
down the rabbit hole and what I just explained is what my understanding
Mm.
of it, and I could be not totally correct because I've read many different things and I've watched a bunch of different things, and all of them kind of have different takes on the
So
scenario. So I'm just
where would
curious.
the final say come from? Who's going to lay down the hammer and say, "Hey, no, Justin, like team, this is it. This is the the straw that broke the camel's back, and these are the definitive terms." Like, where does that come from? From the National Association of Realtors, or where does that come from?
I think it's the state
The state
level.
level. And is that what they're waiting on for that to come finalized?
Yeah, I mean there are supposedly final rules and things like that I have seen, but like I said, I also keep seeing things that are
Mm.
differing. So I do believe that everyone is just figuring it out as we
Sure.
go. And then and don't quote me on this. I think it comes from a state level.
Mm.
Um, someone from Keller Williams was actually nice enough to send me, some information that the corporate office had put together. Um, that it was like, I don't know, a lot of pages of questions and answers, which was very helpful. So I'm going off of that because they have, corporate lawyers and everything that really took a deep dive into this. Which as a smaller business we don't have. So it was very nice for them to
Yeah,
who's
listen,
privy to
and
that.
that's that's the thing of in business, right? You have to play nice with your competition. You have to make friends, and you have to like so status quo, right? Like you're talking to like somebody that excuse me, potentially could come up against in a a house bargaining, but like you guys are business is business, but you're still sounds like you're amicable with them, you know?
Oh, yeah, and I mean we all have the same end goal, I think.
Yeah.
We all want to close the deal, right? So the better, from my opinion at least, is the better we work together, the easier, the smoother everything goes for ourselves and our clients. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, like that's what we want to do. Um, Yeah, so it is. It's. I'm actually, after this, I have a lunch meeting with four other small, like, independent
Oh, cool.
brokers. Yeah. So it goes along to what you're saying, like playing well with others. Like, yeah, we might both have clients that are going for the same house, but that's okay. We can still help each other, and that's it. That group has been extremely helpful for
Yeah.
me
No,
since
it's
we started.
fantastic. So
Yeah.
I have a question I want to stems from like one of our beginning from the beginning of this episode. So
Mhm.
goes hand in hand with being a parent, being a business owner, right? So as a parent and a business owner, how do you go about juggling those responsibilities? I know it's a very open-ended question, but just curious to hear like what's your experiences like and how do you deal with it?
Whew, I think, which may be sound backwards, but I think it's easier for me at least to have a routine, like a mom side routine, like with my daughter, and when we get up, when I like, she eats in the morning, gets ready for the day, takes a bit, whatever. Um, it's easier for me to have that schedule than it is for me to make a day to day work schedule, because my day to day is different every day on the work side.
Mm,
And I think anyone who knows me, this is probably not a good thing, but knows that I'm like extremely inconsistent, like with my schedules. Um, I try really hard to like go to bed at the same time. Well, it's harder now with the kid, but go to bed at the same time, like eat my breakfast at the same time. You know what I mean? Like just fit in a workout at the same time, which doesn't happen nearly as much as I would like for it
mm,
to. Things like that, and I think it's easier for me to do child and home stuff on a more of a routine
interesting.
than it is to plan, for me personally, my work day to day, because my everyday is completely different.
Mm. Or planning a or planning a unboxing of a mic during a live recording of
Of
a podcast.
my mic that I couldn't plug in, yes.
That's interesting, and I think that just I don't know if it's like an instinct, like a maternal parenting thing, right? And that's interesting to hear you say it because, like, for me, and my wife busts her ass. Hopefully she listens to my podcast. She's in healthcare, so she has to report to a physical space every day. She has
Yeah.
to be get in there by 8 o'clock. So 8 to 4:30, that's her shift. We're in our world, mine and your world, just it doesn't work like that. We're on the clock
Mhm.
whenever it may be. So my schedule is I work in the morning, early in the morning, and by 7 o'clock, I head upstairs and I'm turning the frying pan on and I'm getting everybody's meals ready. So for you to say like you try to keep it consistent with your kids. It's interesting for me to hear because, and I know as a parent what you're saying because, like, for people that don't have kids, like, it may sound consistent, but when we say we want our children to eat at like 7:30, that's not happening. So let's not. Maybe for you, you do, but for me,
Well, right now, I mean, she's 5
yeah.
months, so like it's easier. Once she's running around, nothing will. My whole thought process will change. But for right now, that's where we're at. Ask me in like 6 months, and the answer will be different. Um, but yeah, and there. So on one hand, having your own business and having like a flexible schedule is great, and it's also not great because like I've gone through an entire day and been like, I haven't checked an email because I got so sidetracked with the baby or home stuff and doing laundry and things like that, and I'm like, I neglected one thing for the
So
other.
let me ask you this question. off topic, well, topic on topic, and we can keep this on the pod or not, whether you choose
Sure.
to respond. When it comes to like your workflow, and I think this book was written by the co-owner of Keller Williams. Um,
I know what you're going to say.
yeah,
Yeah, go
so
ahead.
but this is and this is gonna I'm gonna this is gonna segue me into my next question. So it's called The One Thing. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with that book?
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I know what you're talking
I think it
about.
would
Yeah.
be a good read for you, if you like to read, or I'm going to say that in a second. But it's something I've been doing, my entire. I think I did it when I was I've been in sales, prior to owning, sales and marketing since 2007. Dating myself here, but since 2007. And as I progressed in my sales career, I got better and better and better and better at things and honing in on things. And then as I got into running and operating the company here, I got really good at like honing in and being able to like stay consistent on focusing on certain items throughout the day. And now some days you can, some days you can't, depending upon like whereabouts you
Mhm.
are in your business, right? But where I'm going with that, Jess, is like I think you take away time from your day being in and out of your email, as aside from like, all right, I should be like blocking off times throughout the day. Like, all right, and I know it sounds crazy, and you're like, what's Jared talking about? But like blocking off times during your day, like, all right, these are the times throughout the day that I'm going to be on my email, responding to emails
Okay.
and getting
Yeah.
back to emails, as opposed to like, hey, I'm going to check my email now, and then at like every 10 minutes you're on, because then you kind of like take away from the effectiveness of like what you're
Sure.
trying to get done. And that's something
Yeah.
I've
No. That.
incorporated into my like work schedule, where I block off time to do X, and only during this time, like from 10 to 11 we're recording our podcast, we're over time, but like that, and then from like 12 to 1:30, that's my gym time, my fitness time, right? And then like I take meetings throughout the day, and then like early in the morning I do other things, and that's kind of like where I was going with that.
Yeah, and that's something that I need to get better at. It's like really blocking out time because like you said, like I am more of like my a notification just popped up on my phone. I gotta answer this email right now, and it would be more efficient to do like as you're saying, block out time. Like okay, from 10 to 11, I'm gonna check my email. I'm gonna respond to all my emails, and then whatever the next part of the schedule may be. It's
However, some people I feel like may argue that fact. Like really successful people would say like they are hyper responsive, and an email comes in, they react right away, or a text message comes in, they react right away. So like what works for them may not work for you. What works for me may not work for you.
right.
But like
So like my anxiety makes me be like, somebody just reach out to me. I have to answer them right now. Like
right,
but
especially if it's a
that's
potential client trying to get a closing or something. Yeah.
right. But there's definitely a happy
There's a,
medium.
there's a fine line, right?
Yeah.
Which takes me into my next question. So I was talking about like one of my favorite books. I've read that multiple times. Do you have any favorite books that you may have consumed more than once? If so, what is it?
Yeah, but it's not gonna have anything to do with business.
Oh, this is whatever. Yeah, whatever
Okay.
makes you go in life.
I there's either gonna be a lot of people who are like, heck yes, or there's gonna be a lot of people who are like, you're weird. But I'm into the like fairy books at the moment. If we're on book talk, if you know, you know. I'm reading or I just finished all of the Sarah J. Maas, A Court of Thorn and Roses, the whole series. And now I'm reading, I think, Rebecca Yarros. It's The Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. And it's about, they both have fairies and dragons and things of that nature. And
I see.
those are
Like
the
for
books
me,
that
I'm not familiar with those types of books. Maybe my wife is. It's just not my mo.
I didn't know that it was my cup. I did not know that it was my cup of tea until like this year,
Oh, okay.
and now I'm into it.
How did you get
But
into that type of book, that type of series? Friend recommended?
somebody, yeah, I want to say maybe my sister, because my sister read all of them. I think she told me, and I was like, I'm not gonna like it. I'm not gonna like it. Um, and then I really liked it. Here
And
we are.
then are you more
But
of like a person that needs to feel the book, or are you like a Kindle, tablet? Like how do you read your books?
I'm a mix. So I do really like having like an actual
Hmm.
book. But now ever since I had a kid and like I'll be like holding her, you know what I mean, trying to get her to go to sleep. So it's easier to have just my Kindle like laying on my lap, without having to hold it. So in this phase of life, I'm more of a Kindle gal. Um, but I understand the appeal of walking into a bookstore and like just like the smell of
Mm.
like paper and actually having the book and things like that. But yeah, that's I am not, and I know some people are like really big into self-help books. I don't know, I could never get into a self-help book.
Hey, may just
If you
like
have
drown you in
recommendation,
boredom.
that's yeah, I don't know.
Hmm.
I don't
I mean,
know.
not for
It's
everybody. I mean,
not for
listen, I
me.
grew up reading like sci-fi and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? Do you have a favorite book?
I mean, that's one of my favorite books. Like I said, that I've read time and time again is like the one thing. It's like
Yeah.
one of my favorite books, I guess I would say, as an entrepreneur or a small business owner or leader. But I think it can help anybody in any circumstance. I feel, but at the same time, it all comes down to your mindset, right? Anybody can read a book, anybody
Hmm.
can listen to a podcast. Maybe some people that's going to be the thing that sets them to the next level to do the thing they need to get done. And
Yep.
others, it may not, So, but for me, it was a good book. And, I maybe come back to it once a year to read it. But that's just, and my wife thinks, she's like, "You're reading that book again?" I'm like, "Yeah, I like this book." She's like,
That's good. That's
"Yeah."
great though. And it also is like for me, if like when I'm gonna go watch a show or I'm gonna read a book or listen to a podcast, like I want to decompress, so I don't want it to be work related. I mean, that's for me. That's like my
Mm,
decompression. Or if I'm, on the treadmill or on like the Peloton or something, I like to have like something that I'm listening to or reading that's like me really interesting. I almost feel like I'm like in the book or something. Because it just I don't like working out, so it takes my mind off the fact that I'm working out. Things like that, or if I'm just laying in bed trying to decompress, I don't want to think about work because then I will not go to
mm,
sleep. So that's where like I think that's where my like love for like fantasy kind of
okay.
comes in. I could just
Kind
kind
of
of
takes you
not
out of
be.
that zone and into a
Yeah,
fairy tale world. I got
yeah,
you.
exactly.
So, all right, I love asking this question to guests on the podcast here.
Okay.
What's one core belief that you have, Jess, that's timeless for you, no matter what?
Just like in
Yeah,
general,
it doesn't matter what it
like
pertains to. Like something that, like you, for as long as you can know, like you believe this is X, and no matter what, it's just something that you've always believed in.
okay, so this comes from my mommy, and it's treat others how you want to be treated. That's the big thing, and I realized that like just growing up and and being in school and like people are mean and like I'm sure I was mean to people,
It's a great way to live by.
it's part of growing up. And now in business it's you're gonna have people who are just like not nice for no reason and they make things difficult and they make a deal difficult. I'm never gonna be like that. I'm never gonna walk in and just automatically be a jerk. um, I'm just not. So I always have that in the back of my head, treat others how I want to be treated. If I'm about to say something and I'm like, I'll stop. I'll think about it. I'm like, okay, that's not nice. I wouldn't want that person to say it to me. I'm not going to say it to them. Like, there's a better way to say whatever I want to get out in a way that's not going to ruffle feathers and make whatever situation we're in right
Yeah,
now more difficult.
and I think I shouldn't say I think. I know, so, in what you're doing in your world, in your industry, right? There's like different gaps of like realtors and brokers, right? You have the baby boomers that have been in it since like, the 80s, 90s, right? And then you have the new
Mm-hmm.
era generation, such as yourself, and like two different methodologies, two different styles. So either
Mm-hmm.
people are going to adapt and adjust, or they're going to be as they are and have they been. So it's not
Right.
the 80s or 90s anymore. So that style of business, that style of business and cutthroatness, how it used to be, that is dead, in business. Like people think,
Mm-hmm.
some people still have that bullish mentality. But I don't think if you put you up to somebody that's in sales and somebody up next to you in sales, and you have your characteristics and you have the other person's characteristics that had that old school mentality, I think 9 out of 10 times, more than 9 out of 10 times, you're going to close a deal over this person, especially in today's day and age. I feel because people,
I like to think so. Because you don't want it, nobody wants to be bullied into
yeah,
something. Like, especially something as big as a home, like buying a house. It's like one of the biggest investments you're ever going to
yeah,
make. Like you can't make someone buy something or sell something that they like a house that they don't want.
yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to me to be like stern. I don't know with my clients, or I guess to an extent, but no, yeah, it comes to a point where it's like they want to be comfortable. Like this is a very nerve-wracking experience. It's
Yeah.
stressful, and if you're just going to stand there and make it more uncomfortable for them, like you're the end goal isn't going to be. You're never going to reach it.
Or even like, and going back to like, not even like you up against like, competition for somebody that has that charismatic or those features about themselves, but even like the client, relationship, being the client is that
Mhm.
way, and they're trying to be with their potential business that's trying to bring them in on doors, and they're acting that way is kind of what I'm saying. So what I'm prefacing saying not every client is your ideal client at the end of the day too, because
Oh
they
yeah,
may not adhere to your core values
yep, and that's yeah. There's definitely been in I don't want to say a lot,
already
but
in
there's
your
been a couple of instances.
already, right?
Yeah, where I start working with somebody, I'm like, we are not vibing. Like we do not. This is not going to work. They're not going to like the way that I work. I don't particularly love the way that they are acting, and I, I I'll find them somebody else who's going to mesh better with them, and that's fine. I'd rather walk away. Everybody's still happy. Nobody hates each other yet, and still get what they need.
But have you had the latter where you've gone to the end game and it's been like, oh, this was listen, I've had it, where,
Oh, this was horrible. I'm never doing
yeah.
this again. Like that. Oh yeah.
Well,
Oh
because like
yeah.
when you're first in business, you want to try and get all the business you can. And then you come to a
Hmm.
conclusion like, that's not the case. Like, that's not what I got in business for. And like, I don't want to work with
Yeah.
this person because they're X. And it just,
Yes. And I used to say, when I first started, like, I'm not in the position to walk away from a sale. But if that sale is like causing me like significant stress and like detriment to my mental health for 3 to 6 months that it takes to close this deal, like it's not, I've learned it's not worth it. It's
I mean,
not.
I think you're 1,000% correct. Excuse me, and like hopefully the people listening that are like, hey, it's just a case. It's not worth it.
It's not worth it. And especially, I mean, in real estate, nothing is that serious. Like, it's not that serious. Like, no one's gonna die.
Yeah, no,
You know, okay, you're in the medical field. Just don't take my advice. But if you're like you're in real estate, you're in marketing, like whatever. Like, okay, it's your livelihood. It's your life. You
yeah,
want to do a good job. Nothing's that serious that like you need to have a meltdown, scream at anybody. Like, let's all just be adults and talk it out and figure it out. And if you're like I said, my thing is like if you're not meshing with somebody, find somebody else in your field that will help them better than you can, and move on.
yeah.
That's
I
that.
I agree. So, Jess, how you do anything is how you do everything. Do you agree or disagree with that quote?
No, I agree with you. I agree with you
Hmm.
100%.
Is there a reason
100%.
why you have that same belief?
Yeah, because I said it earlier, like this is like a big thing that I'm working on in my life, but I'm like a very inconsistent person that like I'll be like, "Oh, I want to try, I don't know." Like I'll tell myself I'm not going to buy Starbucks all week, right? And then by the end of the week I'm like, "But I did good. I really want
Oh,
Starbucks." So I'll buy like like that's just a stupid example, but
no,
like that's
yeah,
how I
yeah.
live. And like something as small as that, like that's how I am in everything. It's really bad,
I mean,
actually.
I wouldn't say that's small or insignificant, but that's your thing, and it's a thing. And I don't know for whatever. Is there? I don't know if you want to go down the rabbit hole, but is there a particular reason why you want to just give up Starbucks?
Well, okay, so
Like taste,
on my
quality, or like?
I've done on my Instagram like that I am trying really hard to figure out how to make coffee at home like that tastes like a coffee shop coffee, so that I'm not spending like $10 on a coffee. You know what I mean? So that's like something, and actually that kind of goes back to like branding and marketing. Like that's something I was like getting my followers in on. I got like Nespresso to like answer one of my messages, like I don't know, all these different things. Uh, that I like included my followers in, like, okay, tell me your favorite like at home coffee recipe, and then I would like try different things and stuff like that. So, and I still do that. But yeah, the reason the Starbucks thing that came into my head is because I was just trying to not spend money on that. If you can save money somewhere, the easiest thing is don't buy a coffee, right?
But for so I mean, you're an avid coffee drinker, as you can see. I'm drinking my coffee and Dunkin' Donuts. I'm not gonna say anything, but I like small, quaint mom and pop coffee shops. Um,
Yep.
And there's something to be said about making a good cup of coffee at home and then going somewhere to get a cup of coffee. It just
Hmm.
it hits different for me at least.
It's okay. Anything is better when someone else makes it for me. It's just a fact. I don't make the rules. It's just a fact of life. So yeah, that's how I feel about my coffee
Yeah.
too. It's true.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, but I'm interested to see your journey as you continue to make the perfect
What coffee
yeah,
journey?
whatever that may be for you at home. So
we're, we're still working
yeah,
on
I'm gonna be following along. So
it.
the quote I just hit you, one of my favorite quotes. I tell everybody, all my guests, it's on my, I guess vision board, if you would. I've had it printed up since like 2016, 2017. It's probably turning yellow, at this point, sitting there. That's my favorite quote. Do you have, I know you told me one thing before, but do you have like another quote that you were renownedly go on by, or was it the one you said earlier?
Oh,
Or do you have like
I
another one
don't
you
know.
may be able to share with us?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't. I can't. Nothing's coming
Oh,
to my
okay.
mind right now. I'm blanking. Uh, Honestly, just like do. I don't even know if this is like a quote, but just like be happy with whatever you're doing. That's my
Hmm.
thing. If you're not happy with what you're doing, move. You're not a tree. Like change it. That's my thing.
Words to
Yep.
live by. No,
Hmm.
I mean, that's perfectly content.
Yeah, Jessica Lampone.
There you go. Quoted on the show today. Episode 35. We're gonna have to narrow it down.
You are welcome.
Yeah, so cool. Well, listen, Jess, I can't thank you enough for being a guest on today's episode
Oh,
of Fit for Business.
thank you.
Thanks for stopping by. I'm going to definitely be following along your journey on how to make the perfect cup of coffee.
Yeah, and anyone who listens, give me your marketing and coffee advice, both.